All right, everybody, welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we're going to be recapping week 13 of the NFL season. It was a pretty hectic week, a lot of rainy games, some really close games, and not gonna lie, it was like the best weekend of football I've had in a long time. I'll just get it out of the way. I'll say it right now. My personal agendas all kind of went my way, and it was a great weekend. And I will say I am the picks champ again. I can crown myself, and I can reclaim that throne as well. It was a great weekend over here. But how are you, Josh?
You know what? Dan, I'm happy for you. You kind of went off this weekend. You deserve it. Let me just hurry and pull out this crown, but I'll just insert you over here. You killed it this weekend. On your personal agenda. If we have to talk about it. The kid put up 200 points in fantasy. He pulled off the immaculate trade. He's gonna slip his way into the playoffs. Meanwhile, on the other side, it's just been a bad year. The double champ, sadly, his crown might be taken and dethroned this year, but it's tough. It's tough. My fantasy team, my personal agenda with the Chargers and everything, it looks brutal. It's just I felt like I lost on every aspect this week. But you know, it's football, man, and I like talking about it.
Yeah, I respect it, and yeah, it's you never know. It's not over, but we'll get on to our stud and goof of the week. It's kind of a depressing conversation, but we'll start off with our stud of the week. It's a really positive conversation. It's a fun one. And Brock Purdy, this man is here to stay. Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel. You can give this award to both of them, but I wanted to give it to Brock Purdy to kind of shout out Colin Clownherd for saying that he won't ever really be a good franchise quarterback because he wears his hats backwards. So yeah, despite the backwards hat wearing and everything, Brock Purdy balled out against the NFC champion Eagles, the one loss Eagles, and he put on a show, went into Philly and won 42-19. He went 19 for 27, 314 yards and 4 touchdowns, 0 picks against the Eagles, and just diced them up. And then shout out to Deebo Samuel as well. He had 4 catches for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns, where he just turned on the Jets and just did it himself. And he also had 3 rushes for 22 yards and a touchdown. So just a beautiful performance and statement from the Niners.
Yeah, that Purdy performance was unbelievable. He kind of got himself in the MVP race with that performance. And he's just out there. He's just surgical, man. That is just the one word we say surgical a lot in this podcast, but he's been surgical, man. He's just dicing up the field, dicing up the defense, and he just looks like a stud out there. He looks comfortable, and he does look like a franchise quarterback. So I don't know why coward. That was kind of a weird take. He makes weird takes. He obviously makes a career out of it. Um, for him wearing his hat backwards, it's like whatever. It's like that doesn't even matter. It's like the most irrelevant thing I've heard in a long time. But it made a statement for himself. It got him a little bit of publicity. So good for him. But yeah, Purdy surgical. What a week. Definitely deserves the stud of the week with that 4 TD performance. And then on the other side, goof of the can we say goof of the month? Is
It's
that
three
that?
consecutive weeks, so yeah, you can.
All right, I think we're goof of the month for those of you who took Austin Eckler, top 5 in your fantasy drafts. This guy has been the fantasy master, but I don't know. Austin Eckler is horrible. 14 carries for 18 yards for Austin Eckler this week. Also had a big drop on a third down. So, shout out to Austin Eckler. His yards per carry were 1.3 yards per carry. So shout out Austin Eckler, really, really balling up over here. Really looking like he's not going to be in the NFL next year.
Yeah, clap it up for Eck. And yeah, he has no effect in the receiving game, which is where he's best. He's like dropping balls and he just isn't really getting looks. So it is, I don't know if there's something wrong injury wise or something, but as you see here, there's 3 goofies on Austin Eckler. I didn't think we would ever say this about any player ever, but we aren't even trying to be dramatic. Like, we aren't even piling on. He has truly been the worst fantasy football player of the week for the last 3 weeks now. He had 4 points this week, 9 points the week before, 7 points the week before that. And it's just something is not right with Eckler, and the Chargers are a mess, and it's bad.
It's the worst running performance. I think the Chargers team has the worst rushing offense, and not even because of bad offensive line. It just seems like it's poor running back play. and maybe you can blame the tight end blocking a little bit, but Eckler is slow. He's not electric. He can't catch. I don't know. I mean, I get why he was trying to get his bag last year because man, what a fall off. And this, I'll be honest, this is why you can't pay running backs a second contract because it can be just 1 year they can have this big of a fall off. And Austin Eckler getting 3 goofs of the week pretty much in a row is just it's brutal. It's brutal. And I'm a Chargers fan. I hate to see it because this is one of my favorite football players for a long time. But it's brutal watching.
Yeah, I mean Eckler is like living proof of just the running backs don't matter full statement right now. And with that, we'll get on to the game recaps. A lot of exciting games to go over, including this one, the Thursday night game. The Seahawks went into Dallas and lost 41-35, and it was just a great back and forth game. Dak obviously was dealing. He kept his MVP shouts alive for sure, but Geno Smith really, really was solid in this game as well. He was damn near perfect every single throw. He was dealing as well. They both were just dealing, and this game was a really fun offensive masterclass for both teams. And DK Metcalf turned on the Jets and kind of ruined Duron Bland's day. And it was a really, really fun game. A lot of fantasy outputs. Pretty much any fantasy option that you started in this one did good. I mean, literally anyone. It was awesome.
Oh my gosh, this game was this is one of the better Thursday night football games. Seems like Thursday night's kind of been lame, but this one was just electric. And the Cowboys finally got their first win against a team with a winning record. So I'm going to clap for them there. It wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. And of course, Dak, he looked phenomenal out there. Tony Pollard, he's fine. His yards per carry weren't great, but he was 20 carries for 68 yards and a touchdown. It looks like he is starting to produce a little bit better production. He's finding his way into the end zone. And then I think I'm about ready to just crown CeeDee Lamb the pretty much the Justin Jefferson. He's kind of taking that role. 12 receptions, 116 yards and touchdown. He seems to be the wide receiver one in the NFL right now, and he can't be stopped. And he's awesome. CeeDee Lamb is just I think with how he's playing, he is the best wide receiver in football right now. Minus Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, he's playing right up there. It's hard, yeah, with Tyreek Hill, like you said, but he's playing right up there. He's literally in the MVP conversation right now, and yeah, it's fun. And I forgot to mention, there literally wasn't a punt in this game. It's the 5th game in NFL history with 0 punts, so that kind of just explains how great of a game this one was. It was crazy.
Yeah, I just want to shout out CD again. 90 receptions this year, already at 1,182 yards and 7 touchdowns, and he's going to be 1,500 yards and 15 touchdowns by the time we're done with this season. But yeah, and Pete Carroll has kind of seemed like a Chargers record. They're the first team in NFL history to ever lose a game with scoring 30 plus points and not punting the football. So brilliant stat. Seems like a Chargers stat, but I'm glad it's not a Chargers stat. I'm glad it's a Seahawks stat.
Yeah, that just shows you how wild this game was. And yeah, like you said, CeeDee Lamb, 17 targets. That's just sickening if you have him in fantasy. It's a lock that he's going to dominate every single week. And speaking of fantasy, you take away positive things from every single fantasy option in this game. We don't really have to go over it. They're all startable moving forward. DK Metcalf, players like that, all are moving high up on your rankings moving forward. And the Cowboys are playing the Eagles this week, so you're excited about all fantasy options, really.
Oh yeah, great game. This was a great Thursday night football game, and yeah, fantasy options for both teams. Great outlook for the playoffs for you if you have any of these players.
And last shout out, Devon Witherspoon, an absolute stud. He's just an absolute lockdown corner. He's going to be a star for years to come. And we'll get on to the first of the Sunday games. My Broncos went into Houston and lost to the Texans 22-17 in a fantastic game that went right down to the last play like we predicted. And the Texans came out the other side with a huge, massive W in that game. And I want to shout out Will Anderson and this guy right here, Derek Stingley, for completely taking over for the Texans. And they dominated defensively. Their defense really stepped up in this game and kind of gave Russ problems. And it was in large part to Will Anderson kind of dominating Mike McGlinchey, and Derek Stingley got his, and literally nothing could go through Derek Stingley in the air. Every time he was targeted, it was just either a pick or an incompletion. He was dominant. So shout out to those two. And CJ Stroud did enough against a stingy Broncos defense to get that home W. It was a really fun game.
It was a really good game, and yeah, it came down there to the wire to literally the last play. That ended up, of course, being a pick right there. Not a lot Russ could do on that play besides just chuck it up and hope for a miracle. But yeah, these teams played each other tough, and I mean, it could have, you flip a coin, any given week, these teams would play each other, and it'd probably go the other way each time. But yeah, I have to shout out, the Texans. They got it done. Nico Collins just absolutely went off. Nine catches for 191 yards and a touchdown, averaging 21.2 yards per reception, which is just sickening. Also a reason I lost in fantasy, so hate to see that. Let's just say the guy I was playing had Nico Collins, and I had Terry McLaurin, so. Oh, and he had Jamar Chase, who scored 34 tonight. But we'll forget about that. Brutal week for me. But oh my gosh. Yeah, Nico Collins, some of these receivers on weeks when you don't need them to go off, they just absolutely take off. And then on the Broncos side of the ball, I mean, Russell had, 186 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. I really don't feel like he played that bad of a game. It just wasn't falling in the Broncos' favor this week. Obviously, there's that controversial penalty on CJ Stroud or against Alex Singleton when he pushed CJ Stroud. So I mean, it was just kind of a coin flip with how everything was going down, and ultimately fell in the Texans' favor.
Yeah, and like I said, how it came down to the very last play. If Russ wouldn't have tunnel vision Sutton, Judy had a 5-yard slant wide open over the middle for a touchdown. It was brutal. If Russ would have just seen Judy, there was a few plays actually that Broncos fans are kind of raging at Russ about. Judy was kind of wide open all game, and he wasn't really looking at him. But yeah, like you said, the Texans got the bounces. Those 3 picks were kind of just fantastic plays by Derek Stingley and Jimmy Ward. So shout out to the Texans. They have a lot of young studs that are going to make those plays. And an interesting takeaway in fantasy is Dameon Pierce did just randomly take over the backfield after Singletary kind of outplayed him the last few weeks, and even last week when they were both healthy, Singletary was the workhorse and the better player, but they gave Dameon Pierce the full workload, and he scored a touchdown. So it looks like that's how they're going to moving forward. So that is interesting. And the Noah Brown had 0 targets. I don't know how much you could take away from that. It was his first game back. 0 catches. And then for the Broncos, you start Javonte and Sutton. There's not really much to take away. Sutton had a great touchdown though.
Yeah. No, you just hit the nail on the coffin right there. But yeah, it was actually a really, really good game. 2 really good teams coached with really, really good coaches. D'Amico Ryans versus Sean Payton. And yeah, you just saw it was a battle till the end, and it was an exciting game. So I hope people watch this one.
And last shout out is to Broncos slot corner Jaquan McMillan. He's kind of been a revelation coming out of Eastern Carolina as an undrafted free agent. So he's been a big boost to that Broncos defense and a big reason for their success. And we'll move on to a barn burner in New England, a really fun one. The Chargers went in there and beat them 6-0 on the road. And did the Chargers win? I mean, that was so gross. I feel gross even talking about this. But did the Chargers win in this one?
I mean, it was a football game that they played.
I'll give them that. That was the football game of all time. That was a football game of all time for sure.
That's pretty much all I can say is it was a football game.
It happened to be
played each other, I guess, kind of. Yeah, it was kind of a funny performance all over the field. I mean, Bailey Zapp I actually shout out Bailey Zapp. He actually had some really good throws. And I mean, there's one to Tyquan Thornton that probably should have gone for a touchdown. I mean, and in this one, the game being 6-0, it was definitely a defensive masterclass on both sides. And then an offensive, just quite frankly, it was an offensive shit show on both sides of the ball. Not really anyone could get anything going. I mean, Herbert, I thought for playing in the rain, actually had a decent game. I mean, if it weren't for 8 drops, he probably would have thrown for 300 yards and at least 1 touchdown. But we had another big Quentin Johnston dropped, which sucked because he was actually looking like he was really coming into his own this game. It looked finally like he was just having a good game. And then on big 3rd down, he drops a pass. Austin Eckler dropped a pass. Keenan Allen dropped a couple. And then Donald Parham on some big third downs. Him and Quentin Johnson have just kind of been the droppy boys this season on big plays. So it was interesting. The Chargers got 2 field goals in the second quarter, which was enough to win. And yeah, it was a football game. And poor Ramondre Stevenson did go out on this one with an injury. I guess I haven't actually checked how bad it was. Do we have an update on that?
It's actually not good. So there is fantasy implications in that Zeke will probably be a fantasy starter the next at least few weeks, while Ramondre it's looking like is going to miss at least a few weeks. So that is something to monitor. They play Thursday, so he definitely won't be playing this week, I'm sure. Demario Douglas could be back. Just monitor those situations. Devontae Parker got some looks, but other than that, you're not starting anyone for the Patriots.
And then I want to give a shout out to Mr. Khalil Mack, in his age 30s, leading the NFL in sacks right now. Has a chance, honestly, to break the sack record over the next few weeks. He's at 15 right now. So Khalil Mack playing MVP football. Kind of sad that it's kind of pointless for the Chargers. But I mean, hell of a season for Khalil Mack.
That's actually why I made this graphic, and why, like, my one takeaway I have in my notes is I do want to shout out Khalil Mack. That man has been incredibly dominant, and he does get a shout for like Defensive Player of the Year, MVP. That's how he's playing, and no one's really talking about it. So love that.
Yeah, Khalil Mack is awesome. Obviously, Keenan Allen having kind of an MVP season too. It wasn't his best game this week, but yeah, shout out to the 2 old veterans. Probably the 2 best football players out on that field. So getting it done in their 30s, kind of cool to see.
And then how far are you going with Eckler? Like, are you benching Eckler this week in a critical week to make the playoffs, or how are you feeling about Eckler in fantasy?
I think till proven otherwise, I am benching Eckler. This Chargers team has no run identity. They can't get the ball in the end zone. I mean, it's just not looking super good. And yeah, I mean, Eckler, why he was been so valuable is he scores touchdowns and he gets receptions, but he had 2 catches for 9 yards. He hasn't scored. He just looks kind of flat and irrelevant. And this Chargers team's just not looking too hot. They're going to go and play a good Broncos defense. And I definitely don't think Austin Eckler is going to have a good game on the ground versus the Broncos. So I would be, at this point, I'd honestly be looking for better options. Obviously, depending on who you have, you might have to start him just for the upside. But I mean, at this point, and if you're still, I doubt trades are happening in your fantasy league. But if you could have gotten like a James Conner or anyone for Eckler, I think you would at this point. But if you have a Devon Achane coming off of injury reserve, you put him over Eckler. There's just a handful of guys I'd put Dameon Pierce over Eckler at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a Javonte, Dameon Pierce even type player. Like I wouldn't go too far because he could get some receiving work against the Broncos, but like I don't know how high his upside is. I really don't. With the last 3 weeks, it might seem like his ceiling is just capped.
Yeah, and I think honestly in these last few weeks, I would expect, if the Chargers were smart, to start leaning more heavily upon Josh Kelly, who seems to have a little bit more burst, and just quite frankly a better runner. But we'll see. I wouldn't go too crazy. I mean, obviously, I'd probably stick him in your flex. That's just depending on if you're like in a 2 flex league. He'd probably worth a flex spot. But yeah, I mean, just don't expect a lot of upside. I don't think at this stage of his career.
Yeah, just monitor him. Is very scary right now. But we'll get on to the next one. The Lions went into New Orleans and beat the Saints 33-28, and honestly, kind of like a vintage Kamara and vintage Taysom Hill game. The Lions got the W, and it was a good game. We kind of said that this would be a close game. It felt like it was going to be a close game in NOLA, but yeah, the Lions kind of did their thing. All their stars kind of came through. Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra both had absolute days. They weren't really too effective on the ground, which was surprising. Montgomery did get a touchdown, but it wasn't like a dominant day through the ground at all. And for the Saints, kind of a weird game. You have Derek Carr kind of going out for a minute, Jameis coming in, Taysom coming in, and just kind of rotating them around. I think Derek Carr's fine, and that team is just weird. They were close though. So.
Yeah, it was a weird game, and one thing I want to point out is the Lions defense is kind of calling for concern at this point. I mean, I think it's now 3 straight games of giving up 25 plus points. So I don't know. I think their offense is obviously so electric, and they're 9-3, and their offense keeps them in it. But I mean, their defense is not very is not what it seemed to be at the beginning of the year. Um, it seems like they're just kind of trending in the wrong direction. I'd almost say. Maybe the Lions will turn that around, but yeah, their defense is kind of calling for concern for a 9-3 football team. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I 100% agree. It's actually been 4 weeks that they've allowed over 25 points. Two of those weeks were against the Packers and Bears. And yeah, I 100% agree. I think it was evident ever since that Chargers game. I was scared, and it didn't seem like a one-off thing against the Chargers. As good as the Chargers are, it seemed like their defense was just kind of exposed, and it's been that way the last few weeks. And they're really a problem through the air. That's how you beat the Lions now, is through the air. And so I think it is a problem, and it's going to hurt them with these high-powered teams come playoffs.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, ultimately their offense is just electric enough to get it done. I mean, their offensive weapons, like you said, is an offensive weapon masterclass. Jameer Gibbs, David Montgomery, both of those guys are just a perfect complementary duo for each other. With David Montgomery definitely vulturing the touchdown away from Gibbs after his 36-yard run, which is kind of silly. I thought, why not just keep him in and let him get it? And then I mean, Sam Laporta, dude, that guy, from a fantasy aspect too, is just ridiculous. What you're getting tight end production from him in his rookie season is just phenomenal. Amon-Ra St. Brown also, he only having 2 receptions, but 49 yards and getting in the end zone. I mean, they're just able to disperse the ball a lot, and everyone's getting it done on offense. So the Lions with Ben Johnson, who's going to be probably the hottest head coaching candidate going into this offseason, they're just looking awesome on offense. And then the Saints, like you said, just a weird, just so weird. I can't quite figure out how and why and what they do and how they play their football games. They're always somehow competitive in it. And I mean, they almost came back from a 21-point deficit. Obviously, Derek Carr, I don't think it was Derek Carr's worst game, but I don't think it was his best game. And they put in Jameis, and he was fine. He went 2 for 5. I mean, he missed Olave on a couple wide open plays. But it's just so weird. And they have Taysom Hills, who's their leading rusher this week, and he gets some snaps at quarterback. It's so crazy. How the Saints play is just so crazy. And I can't really figure out if they have an identity or not, but it's just like they're playing this like makeshift team every week, and it's just crazy, and it's ultimately not good enough for them to be a winning football team. They're sitting at 5-7. But I mean, they really do have some talent on that Saints team.
Yeah, they're gonna need to start translating to wins though if they want to win this division. And is there anything else you want to say in this game?
Not too much else to take away. But the Lions, like, I'm gonna just shout it out one more time. That defense is concerning me heading towards the playoffs.
Yeah, and you're starting every fantasy option. There's no really takeaways for either of these teams. And we'll get on to the next one. The Colts went into Tennessee and beat the Titans 31-28 in overtime. A really good game. Minshew found Pittman for the win in overtime. A super good play, and Pittman kind of just dominated this entire game. And on the Titans side, there was kind of a weird moment where Levis and Hopkins had some beef, and they were kind of shouting at each other on the sideline. And then a few plays later, Levis threw an absolute dot to Hopkins. It was a touchdown, and it was one of the more beautiful touchdown throws you'll see this season. He fit that into a very tight window. So a beautiful throw from Levis. Levis actually dealed this game. He had a pretty good game quietly. He had some really good throws, and he kept the Titans in this game with a very bad offensive line. So shout out to Will Levis. He was relentless, and I think he kind of played himself into being the Titans quarterback in 2024. So you do love to see that. And shout out to the Colts for coming away with the win. They're a really fun team with a lot of young, stingy players that play really hard. So you love it.
Yeah, very good divisional matchup between these two. And yeah, I mean, shout out Will Levis. He really played hard. He made some really good throws. And he had the Titans in it the entire time with, and they don't have enough, like, I'll just say that they just don't have enough receiving options. They got an aging DeAndre Hopkins. Their next best option is Chigaquanko, who is just fine. He's not that good. He's their tight end. And then obviously you got the two good running backs and Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears, who actually had a really good game. They almost split carries it. Derrick Henry 21 for 102 and 2 touchdowns. Tajay 16 for 75, both averaging over 4 yards a carry. So I mean, that's really good. That's nice to have for your young rookie quarterback. But yeah, ultimately it's just not enough. and they need some weapons. They need some offensive line help. And then shout out Shane Steichen. In my opinion, I think he's coach of the year at this point. I mean, and his track record and everything with quarterbacks is pretty phenomenal. He's got Gardner Minshew playing really, really good. And he had Anthony Richardson playing really, really good at the beginning of the season. This Colts team is just feisty, and they're at 7-5, looking, to make it to the playoffs, which is just kind of crazy, which I would not have expected from looking at the Colts roster. But they're playing above their weight class right now. And I think it's, shout out to Shane Steichen, because he just really has this team playing really good. No Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss, not his best game, but Gardner Minshew was getting it done through the air. I mean, 11 passes to Michael Pittman for 105 yards. Some big plays to Alec Pierce for his first 100-yard game, 3 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown, with that pretty much game-sealing catch in overtime to Alec Pierce. Yeah, I mean, just really phenomenal play from the Colts, and just hanging in every game and ending up on top of a lot of them.
Yeah, Alec Pierce had a little legacy game. He was making some big plays there at the end, and that is an interesting takeaway for fantasy, because that translated to Josh Downs not really having an impact at all. So I don't think you can start Josh Downs here next week. So that is something to take away in fantasy. And another takeaway in fantasy is monitor Derrick Henry's concussion. He did go out pretty early with that injury. He got it done for owners before going out, but you do want to monitor that. Vrabel did say today that he didn't have a concussion, but he was placed in the concussion protocol. So that's weird. I don't know what's going on. Just monitor that. If Henry doesn't play Monday, then Tyjae Spears is an awesome start. So you do want to monitor that. And yeah, this was a really fun divisional game, like we predicted.
Yeah, a really good game. It was fun to see Will Levis out there. And I think that gives Titans fans a lot of hope, just because Will Levis does look like he could grow into being a franchise quarterback. So, he's got a really pretty amazing arm, and it's fun to watch him.
Yep. And last takeaway, kind of bouncing off that, is I do think DeAndre Hopkins is a viable option. He got 12 targets. He's getting a lot of looks. So I do think DeAndre Hopkins is a viable option to start moving forward with Will Levis. And we'll go on to the next one. The Falcons went into New York and beat the Jets 13-8. And I want to read you a funny stat. So quarterbacks with games of 2 or plus passing touchdowns, 2 or more passing touchdowns. Joe Flacco has 1. Jets quarterbacks this entire 2023 season have 1. So I'll read that one more time. Quarterbacks in the 2023 season with 2 or more passing touchdowns in multiple games. Joe Flacco has 1. Jets quarterbacks combined have 1. So that's crazy. I think the Jets might have fumbled not bringing a familiar face back to be your big star Aaron Rodgers backup. That's pretty crazy. I feel like last year he did some good things for you guys at the beginning of the year. So yeah, that's an L from the Jets, and they stayed put. They looked the exact same that they have for the last 13 weeks. And yeah, shout out to the Falcons, I guess, for going in there. Kyle Pitts looked decent. Clark Phillips, I will shout out Clark Phillips. He filled in for AJ Terrell and had a really good game. So shout out to him. And yeah, this one was gross.
Yeah, gross game. I guess you can say good defensive performance. I guess from each side, their defenses played really well. But yeah, I mean, just horrible. I mean, when we're talking about the quarterbacks for these two teams, it's just gross. And it's just pathetic. You think at this point in the NFL that if you make it to the NFL, I feel like you should be a decent quarterback. I feel like there's a lot of talent out there that could be a lot better than what these two teams have on their roster. And yeah, I mean, ultimately it's just the management being stubborn and not adapting to the times and not getting yourself a good quarterback. I mean, hell, Joe Flacco, Mike White, Gardner Minshew's, there is decent backups. PJ Walker's. I mean, there's guys that can play football and at a serviceable level. But I mean, when you're talking about the Jets backups, I mean, the Jets could be easily, this record could be flipped and be an 8-4 team, even with a backup, if they had a competent backup. If you would have just cut your losses with your second overall pick and just said, you know what, he sucks. Let's bring back Mike White, because if Aaron Rodgers or somebody gets hurt, we have a quarterback that can win games and can go out there and make throws. And so ultimately it's the Jets management and ownership and whoever's ultimately making the decision. It's their fault. They're not a good football team. And yeah, I mean, the Falcons just don't have a good quarterback either at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, it's for that reason that I think Jacoby Brissett is going to get paid an absolute bag in this offseason. I think it's in spite of Robert Saleh, because backup quarterbacks are very valuable. I think the NFL knows, like NFL GMs know, if the Jets had a guy like Jacoby Brissett, they would be in the playoff hunt right now. So it is a valuable thing, and it's something that the Jets straight up got wrong. They're still going to make excuses 13 weeks into the season and scapegoat people. But yeah, just a complete terrible performance from both these teams. It was gross. One touchdown got it done though, because that's what it takes against the Jets.
It's just one touchdown, you can win a game. I'm excited to see Aaron Rodgers play for this team next season, see how that turns everything around. But I mean, we'll see who still has a job in that Jets front office and everything come next fall.
And Jets fans, it's kind of odd. Jets fans like love to say that their former number 2 overall pick is like good because their quarterbacks that they're inserting in right now aren't doing good either. But like, no, they're all just the same. They're all just not NFL quarterbacks. And you guys gave Trevor Siemian the last 2 drives of the game at the very end, and Dalvin Cook literally didn't block on purpose to get Siemian murdered. So like, that wasn't really an evaluation either for Siemian. So let him start a game at least. And it was just like, I
And
don't
give him the first
understand it.
team reps. You can't you throw a guy in there at the end when he hasn't got any first team reps all season. I mean, that's just ridiculous. They're trying to justify something that's just not there. And it's just pathetic at this point. It's like, cut your losses and move on, man. It's gross talking about, and it's quite pathetic, and your whole franchise is pretty pathetic because of it.
Yeah, it's so gross talking about it. Aaron Rodgers is your GM, and he's such a bad GM that Alan Lazard is a healthy scratch. Randall Cobb is a healthy scratch, and you're starting Xavier Gibson at receiver, and Brown Lee, and I forget whoever else. So terrible. We'll go on to a little bit better of teams. The Cardinals are going to go into the Cardinals went into Pittsburgh and kind of dominated them in the inclement weather in Pittsburgh, 24-10. Interestingly, kind of a James Conner domination in his return to Pitt, where he went to college and where he began his NFL career. Pretty fun. He really did do good, and it just didn't seem like a game that the Cardinals would win, like just a weather game, a weather delay game in Pittsburgh. It just feels like a game that Mike Tomlin grinds out, and so I was really, really surprised and impressed by the Cardinals for grinding this game out. They outgrinded the Steelers. They out-physicaled them. They ran the ball down their throats. They finally, like we were praying for in the preview, they did get James Conner fully involved, and it, like we said in the preview, did translate to a win because he translates to success. He's a beast of a player.
Yeah, I mean, and I gotta say, I'm just happy. I'm happy the Cardinals won this game because I feel like the Steelers have just kind of frauded their way with a great coaching staff. I mean, talk about the complete opposite of the Jets. Is how the Steelers have done, just kind of makeshifting their way to wins, even with, you know, just a mid team. And in my opinion, like the Jets have a way better team, but the Steelers are sitting at 7-5, just because they have a competent head coach that can make the right decisions. But it is kind of refreshing to see the Steelers go down in a way, because I felt like they have a way better record than what their team says. I mean, they do have some good players, they have a good defense, but there's just no way they should be at 7-5 looking to make the playoffs. And the Cardinals just kind of exposed them for that. I mean, it just showed that Kyler Murray, James Conner, and Trey McBride are just better than the Steelers, and they played good. And I mean, shout out to the Cardinals for finally getting this man James Conner involved. And then Trey McBride, man, just looks awesome. This guy is pretty electric, and it's awesome seeing Kyler Murray get a really good connection with him. I mean, Kyler Murray only completed 13 passes, and 8 of them were to Trey McBride.
And I mean, it's like he doesn't even care about Hollywood as wide receiver 1. I know he went out with the injury, but he goose egged in this one because he just loves Trey McBride. He is the wide receiver 1 in this offense. It's pretty awesome. He's a target machine. He's a must start in fantasy, and he's someone you're really optimistic, like in years coming, like in dynasty leagues. You want Trey McBride, and you're just really looking forward to Trey McBride's future, because people forget he was the number 1 tight end in last year's draft class. He's a really good prospect out of Colorado State. So you love what you're saying. He scored a touchdown. He got called back. He goes the next play and scores a touchdown. He's a stud.
Yeah, shout out to the Cardinals, just a big win. Some good fantasy options too from both sides, but just honestly, shout out to the Cardinals. Start James Conner going forward. I think Kyler's a start. And then from the Steelers side, you got Najee and Jalen Warren.
No, you don't. You're not starting
Oh,
Najee or Jalen Warren. If you start Najee or Jalen Warren, you're a psycho. And especially the next few weeks, especially this week against the Patriots on Thursday
they
Night
are
Football.
they are splitting carries awfully sus, and it's back and forth each week. So they're good running backs, but yeah, you're right. You probably shouldn't be starting them.
Yeah, like a week ago, I would have agreed with you, but with Trubisky, this offense you can't trust. And this Thursday Night Football game against the Patriots might be the lowest scoring NFL game of all time. So I really don't know if you could start anybody other than Deontay. Even like Pat, I don't think you can start any Steeler other than Deontay with Trubisky because Trubisky loves Deontay, and that's about it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's actually pretty brutal. Trubisky is pretty awful. Yeah, and you're probably right. Moving forward this week against a really hard Patriots defense on Thursday Night Football, this score might end 3-0. So pretty gross. Yeah, and you're right. Don't start anyone unless you're forced to. I mean, maybe Najee as a flex, hoping he falls into the end zone. But even that, be wary because it's going to be a pretty gross matchup going forward.
Gross Steelers, and then for the Cardinals, you're really excited about James Conner and Trey McBride for the fantasy playoffs, and we'll get on to the next one. The Dolphins went into Washington and dominated the Commanders 45-15, and this game also went exactly how we said in the preview. Again, it was like the Dolphins love to dominate bad teams, and we've been saying for weeks, I don't think the Redskins are that good of a football team, and they went in there and showed it again. They couldn't even put up points really against this Miami team. So yeah, for the Dolphins, you plan accordingly because Achane is the RB1. He's the main bell cow over Mostert. So plan accordingly for that. And Tyreek Hill does it again, like we said in the preview. He's probably going to score a touchdown because he does it every week, and he did it again. He scored a few because he is just a freak, and you cannot stay with that guy downfield. It's crazy.
No, it was just pretty disrespectful leaving Tyreek Hill with really no safety help, not doubling him. I mean, it was just awful, awful, awful game planning from the Redskins this week. And honestly, I don't think the Redskins will be able to, or sorry, the Commanders will be the Redskins until Ron Rivera is fired because he said it'd take 3 to 4 years to bring a winning culture. And I think he's just made a losing culture. And I think he is pretty much washed up. I think his time has come in the NFL and gone. And I honestly think, at this point, they have a team that should be better than it is. Especially playing in the NFC. I feel like they should be more they play in a good division. But yeah, I mean, Ron Rivera is just not that anymore. And I mean, you can blame the players, and greatly so, has a lot to do on the players, but the way Ron Rivera has built this team is just, and the way he's calling everything is just, I don't know. I don't think we'll be able to call him the Commanders till he's gone.
Yeah, and my main takeaway is Sam Howell's just not good, and you guys need to stop trying to tell me he is. Anyone needs to stop trying to tell me that Sam Howell is good because I was kind of over that hype train months ago, and I was right. I'll just stand on that right now. I'm not even going to say I think I was right. I was right, and the Redskins will be looking elsewhere next year. Hopefully, I honestly I wouldn't even be surprised if they stayed the same. But hopefully they're looking elsewhere next year. And for fantasy, you're Terry McLaurin. He could have been a goof of the week. Terry McLaurin, you're not starting because you don't want that to screw you over and not be the reason you don't make the playoffs. So I don't know if you're starting literally anyone other than Brian Robinson. It's crazy.
I can't believe we didn't put Terry McLaurin as goof of the week. He was on my fantasy team too. Terry McLaurin, 3 targets, 0 receptions. I don't know. What are we doing here? What are we doing, Sam Howell? Not to mention I had Logan Thomas on my fantasy team. Combined for 0 catches. Obviously the 2-point conversion doesn't count as a catch on your stats, even though Logan Thomas did get a 2-point conversion, ended with 2 points. Terry McLaurin, 0 points. Just brilliance all around. Yeah, I guess I'm looking at Sam Howell's stats. I didn't realize it was as bad as it was. 18 touchdowns with 14 interceptions. He has a lot of passing yards, I guess, with 3,400. I know he's one of the top guys in yards, but wow, I didn't realize it was 18-14. Not the worst. I mean, you could look over at number 2 on the Jets, and he'll show you what a good touchdown to interception ratio really looks like.
Oh, well, the Jets would kill for that, or Jacoby Brissett to go and insert into their lineup. Imagine that type of production. You'll take a Jameis Winston or Sam Howell type player if you'll take 5 picks if you can get the yardage that comes with it. So you'll take that, and sadly the Jets don't even have that.
No. Just have to throw that out there because it's pathetic, and we're talking crap on Sam Howell, who some teams would kill for, because that would be a major upgrade, and he can actually get into the end zone too. I mean, he'll throw 14 interceptions, but he'll get you 18 touchdowns. But yeah, just crazy. And yeah, the Redskins just got dominated by the Dolphins, which we kind of figured would happen. The Dolphins like to dominate bad teams, and that's what happens.
You starting Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin both. You started a goose egg duo from the Redskins. That's just absolutely immaculate. And I think Curtis Samuel and Brian Robinson are the only starts for the Redskins this week.
What a week for Dalton Kincaid and DJ Moore to be on a bye week, right? Absolutely just awful. The 1 week my tight end's on a bye and I have to stream one, it's 0 points. So, and Terry McLaurin I had hope for Terry this year, but I mean, they just can't seem. And when you have a number 1 receiver, I mean, like Terry McLaurin, who is actually should be considered top 15 receiver in the league with how really good he is, he should have a catch in every game. I mean, even until he's fucking 40 years old. Excuse my language, it gets me heated, but it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely unacceptable. And for the Dolphins, you're very excited about every single option moving forward. You're starting every single one, and Waddle's a little bit mid, not gonna lie. Waddle getting 10 points in this matchup is crazy to me. But the Panthers went into Carolina and lost to the Buccaneers 21-18, a good home win for the Buccaneers. And Mike Evans kind of took this game over. This is kind of like a Mike Evans legacy Hall of Fame shout out game. Like, he is an absolute beast. He's insane. He had his 10th straight NFL season. This is his 10th season. It's also his 10th straight in a season with 1,000 yards receiving. So just absolutely crazy, legendary stats for Mike Evans. And he's really the only takeaway in this one. He is dominant, and he kind of won this game with his great touchdown.
That's freaking consistency. I mean, 10 years of staying healthy, 10 years of getting 1,000 receiving, or 1,000 plus receiving yards is just something that, yeah, I mean, that's Hall of Fame. That's just unheard of. Mike Evans has been at the top of his game, and Mike Evans has not been as he has not gotten the recognition he really deserves as like a top receiver in the NFL. And it's been like this for 10 years. You never see Mike Evans at the top of your, fantasy list or anything, top of your wide receiver rankings. But I mean, this dude is just probably the most consistent player you'll ever see in the NFL, staying healthy and just putting up numbers. And I mean, this year is just kind of a legacy year for him. Doing it with Baker Mayfield, it's just crazy. I mean, shout out Mike Evans, just legendary stuff.
Yeah, legendary from Mike Evans. He had 7 catches, 162 yards, and then that long 75-yard touchdown. So love that. Rachaad White had 84 yards on the ground with a touchdown, including 3 catches for 22 yards. So Rachaad White and Mike Evans are really the 2 stars for the Bucs that Baker really relies on. And even Godwin had a touchdown in this game finally. So the Bucs really clicked in this one. And Bryce Young made it hard for me to be a Bryce Young apologist and big Bryce Young guy. It's hard to back him up, even though I know that it's we're on to 2024 with his evaluation. It's going to take at least one more year. But the other takeaway for the Panthers is Chuba Hubbard is the main bell cow. So plan accordingly for that if you want to start a Panther in fantasy. And Adam Thielen, another absolute terrible performance that makes you not really want to start him again.
Yeah. Awful hot take by me. I really thought after they fired the staff it was going to be different this week, and we'd have that like one boost of like, we're going to go out here and we're going to win to show it was the coaching staff. But they fell short, 3 points. And yeah, it's like you said, it's hard to keep defending Bryce Young. Like, obviously it's rough. I mean, the weapons out there. I mean, just what he's having to go out there and play with is rough. They gave the farm just to get Bryce Young, and you'd hope for a little bit more. But yeah, we're looking on to 2024. We're looking to get a good offensive coordinator. We're looking for some nice, good weapons to pair Bryce Young with at this point. But yeah, at this point, and not having their what's going to be first overall pick this year. I mean, because these Panthers could have ended up with almost with Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point and still gotten a CJ Stroud or something, which just probably hurts the insides of their owners and everything that are going to have to deal with that trade and giving up DJ Moore and just brutal. But yeah, awful take by me last week. I am done, and I picked the Panthers like 3 times to win games, and I think I'm over it.
Yeah, I think the Panthers are just different. Like when you pick the Raiders to win after they fired their coach, that made a lot of sense. But the Panthers are just a different animal. They're a different mess. And is there anything else you took away from this one?
No, sorry for that hot take, everyone.
Yeah, apologies. That was a pretty terrible hot take. You doubled up on it at the very end too, didn't you? With the Jonathan Mingo 2 touchdowns.
That was pretty bad. We're gonna I have to apologize for that one. We're gonna move on to next week.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next one before we lose credibility here. But we'll go on to a really electric game. The 49ers went into Philly and just completely slaughtered them 42-19. They made a complete statement in their NFC Championship revenge game. And like we predicted again, no one that watches the NFL Seekers should be surprised at all with this one. We said the Niners were definitely winning this one. I even said it was probably going to be a domination, and they dominated. Deebo Samuel, this guy right here, backed up all of his talk and all of his trash talk, and he completely dominated. Him and Brock Purdy were our stud of the weeks, and that was definitely warranted. I shouted out Brock Purdy stats during that segment, and I do want to shout out Deebo Samuel. He had a perfect 158.3 passer rating when he was targeted against the Eagles after talking all that crap. And then he also had 7 touches for 138 total yards and 3 touchdowns after talking all that crap. So Deebo Samuel is the definition of standing on business, and he is a GOAT. And I love that guy. I love Brock Purdy. He is just kind of shutting everyone up. He's playing some really good football and just facilitating greatly. He's just getting it to all of his stars and letting them make plays. So the Niners are a really fun team to watch, and they honestly get me excited. I think they're the team to beat right now.
Yeah, after that domination of a performance, 42-19, that is just crazy against this Eagles team, who I said, we weren't surprised. Me and you knew this one was coming. I originally had the Eagles, and I changed it because there was just a vibe going that this game was not going to be close. And the Eagles coming off of some really close wins against some good teams like the Chiefs and Bills in back-to-back weeks. It was just suiting that the 49ers came in here and just shut them up. And the Eagles have played so many close games, and it was time they just finally got, and this is probably, honestly, in all reality, it's probably a good thing for the Eagles to have a nice kick in the ass, because it'll probably make them a better team going forward. But yeah, this is kind of the wake-up call the Eagles needed, and the 49ers are now officially the team to beat.
Yeah, and there's really not too much to take away for the Eagles. They just got outplayed. They weren't the better team in this one. The Niners were by far the better team, and they blew them out of the water in every aspect. And they came out, and the Eagles defense kind of dominated, and the Niners started with a 3-and-out, and it was looking like the Eagles might have some momentum and might have a good game. But no, the Niners were just a well-oiled machine that once they scored, they literally couldn't stop, and every single possession was just domination. It was really fun to watch. It was pure domination, and these are the games I just love talking about. I love watching because these guys hated each other. It was a real rivalry out there, and it was a fun one.
Yeah, and it just showed you the talent that's on that 49ers team. Just stars on every single level of the offense and defense, and it seems like they are just really now starting just to really put it together and click. And both of these teams just really don't have that many injuries too. So this is pretty much just healthy team against healthy team, which is pretty cool.
And the only fantasy takeaways are for the Eagles. You don't take away anything because you're not going to play the Niners every week. Thankfully, you guys actually get to play the Cowboys this week, and I think the Eagles will probably put up a lot of points in that one. So will the Cowboys, it'll be high scoring. And for the Niners, there's nothing to take away because you start literally every single option, including Brock Purdy, because he's doing a great job of spreading it around, and you start them all because you want to target the Flames.
Yeah, yeah. And they're gonna put up numbers, I feel comfortable starting, every single 49er player because every single week they have a chance to score multiple touchdowns and get tons of yards. So yeah, you start everyone on both sides.
Absolutely electric game, like we predicted in this one. And we'll go on to the next one. The Browns went into LA and lost to the Rams 36-19. And Joe Flacco didn't look too bad in this one. Honestly, I thought Joe Flacco, kind of did his thing. He looked solid. He was playing safe football until the very end. He threw that bad pick to John Johnson. But I thought Joe Flacco was playing good. He was doing his best to keep the Browns in this. He was feeding Elijah Moore, who he was familiar with from New York. And Amari Cooper going down kind of hurt him. But shout out to the Browns and Flacco for trying. And shout out to the Rams. They finally got Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp in the end zone, both the same game, both kind of had really fun games and kind of came through for you in fantasy. Kupp came through at the very, very end in kind of a garbage time way, but it worked. The Rams did their thing. Sean McVay said that he let Kyron Williams score at the end because he had him on his fantasy team. So Sean McVay does care about your fantasy team. So you do love to see that too.
Oh, that's ridiculous. One thing I want to say is, shout out to the Rams again. Somehow they are 500, 6-6, again, punching above their weight class. But also, I don't know, are we hitting the concern button on the Browns defense now in back-to-back weeks, giving up 30 points?
I'm not like hitting the panic button on them or anything. It's hard without without a quarterback. With the backup quarterback, it's going to be hard on you. And I think the Rams just kind of really clicked in this game at home. So I'm not too worried. I guess we'll have to monitor them moving forward. I don't know. I think Flacco is kind of hard to be a good defense because he really airs the ball out, and I feel like it makes it hard on the defense. But I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it is. Once you lose your starting quarterback for the season, it feels like just an absolute gut punch, and it kind of deflates the whole team in general. Once you lose, your top D, your top G at that point. But yeah, I guess it's just been back-to-back weeks. It hasn't looked pretty. Maybe they'll find a little bit more consistency now with Flacco in there, and maybe they'll have a little bit of something to play for because they're still in the playoff mix at 7-5 right now.
Yeah, they definitely are. And speaking of playoff, the Rams are in the playoffs right now. They have the tiebreaker over the Seahawks for beating them twice. So that is just awesome for the Rams. You love to see that. And the Rams, Packers, Seahawks are going to have a pretty tight race here to see who makes the playoffs. And I honestly don't know if the Browns are going to make the playoffs at this rate. It seems like they're going to keep losing these close games.
Yeah, I think the Browns are kind of looking that way. And if the Rams somehow squeeze their way into this playoffs, then wow, that's just great coaching. That is just great drafting of guys in the late rounds and hitting on your picks. But yeah, shout out to the Rams. What a game. Puka Nacua, three games now over 150 yards. Only Jamar Chase and Randy Moss have done that in their rookie season. So pretty legacy stuff from a guy that was drafted in the 7th round.
Yeah, it's pretty funny how the Rams went from F them picks to now we need all them picks, and all they care about is picks after, hitting on Puka and Byron Young and a lot of late round guys that they kind of had fun dart throws with this draft. I think they're going to want those picks. And yeah, speaking of Puka, I think it's evident he's the Rams wide receiver 1. He is their main, just best overall receiver. I'll say it. Cooper Kupp is their
better than Cooper Kupp. Yeah, way better.
I think he took that crown this game. He was the main option. He was more of a focal point. He was more of an overall wide receiver 1, does it all and so good after the catch. He's also great in the intermediate game like Cooper Kupp. So I do think that Puka Nacua is just a insane still, and he's awesome.
Yeah, I 100% agree. He should win runner up for offensive player of the year behind CJ Stroud, of course. But yeah, really good stuff for the Rams. And yeah, it's funny how they flipped that F them picks to we need every pick.
Yeah, you love to see it. Puka Nacua breaking records. And we'll go on to the Sunday night football game, a really fun one. The Chiefs went into Green Bay and lost to the Packers 27-19. And again, if you listen to the NFL Seekers, you shouldn't be surprised about this outcome. I was pretty confident that Jordan Love would continue the form that he was in against the Lions. He was just too confident. It was exuding out of him. It was oozing out of his body when he was walking off that field, and it carried over into this game. He was so cool, calm, collected. He's just such a solid quarterback. He fits it into such tight windows. He does it with his feet, 1 foot off the ground. He looks like Aaron Rodgers doing it. It's crazy stuff. I love Jordan Love. Want to shout him out. He had a 90.6 passing grade per PFF, a 92 overall grade per PFF. LaFleur at halftime said he had great poise, and I think that's a great way to describe Jordan Love, is poise. That might be his best attribute, is poise, and that's why he's so successful right now, is because he's confident and so poised. And even against the Chiefs, he wasn't phased at all on that 4th and 1. He just threw it up and fit it into an absolute window that no one really could fit it into. So Jordan Love is just balling. His last 3 games, he has 857 yards, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he's 3-0. So that's all I want to talk about is my boy J Love.
That's progression. That is leadership. That is getting better over time. And that's what you want to see from a quarterback. That's what elite quarterbacks do, is if they have to sit for a year or whatever, they get in, they progressively get better through the weeks. And Jordan Love just looks dominant, and he's playing like a top 5 quarterback over these past 3 weeks. I mean, he looks like a changed person. He is just out there dealing, and it is just fantastic. I mean, he was outplaying Mahomes tenfold. I mean, he was the better quarterback out there, and that ended up being the difference. And I mean, this Packers team is just rolling. I mean, these guys look scary right now. They don't feel like they're going to lose. They're playing complementary football. Rashawn Gary on the other side of the football is just lethal. He is just a force to be reckoned with. And then the takeaway for the Chiefs, in my opinion, is their offense is not that good. I'll just say it. Their offense is not that good. They are not the same old Chiefs like you preached over the last 5-6 weeks. They are the run-first Chiefs. This team runs through Isaiah Pacheco. It doesn't run through Travis Kelce and Mahomes anymore.
Yeah, and plan accordingly. It is the run-first Chiefs. Plan accordingly. That was the first note I put in this for this game, because they started the game running the ball. They ended the game running the ball. It's what they're going to do. Even on their last drive, they were running the ball with Pacheco. It's so crazy. Their whole offensive dynamic makes no sense. They have zero dynamism. It's just a slot fest on offense. Like, there were some sloppy penalties that aren't like Andy Reid and the Chiefs. So they're off, and I think them not really pushing the pedal on offense is making them sloppy. So it's bad football. They're in bad form, and that's why I was so confident in the Packers, is they're in better form. They're the better team. They literally started the game with the lead and retained the lead the entire game. They didn't even really get threatened. It was just domination from the Packers, and I was really loving watching this game. I'll be honest, I was loving it.
Oh, it was fantastic. It had a smile all over my face, because it just seems like the Chiefs are just no longer them. And obviously, they don't have the best receivers out there. But yeah, they just look stagnant. And I mean, there's just like you said, there's no dynamite. There's nothing to this offense that gets you really that scared. You got a hard runner in Isaiah Pacheco, which is great. But obviously, that's not leading to wins. And Mahomes, I don't know. There's something different about Mahomes this year, and Kelce. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like they're playing for all that much. It kind of looks like they're defeated week to week. I don't know.
And I mean, Kelce doesn't look like the same Kelce. He looks like he's lost a step. I wouldn't even say he looks like he's lost a step. He has lost a step. When you watch him run routes, when you watch him run with the ball, he has lost a step. So maybe that's why the Chiefs are so insecure and non-confident calling plays. That could be a reason, but it's just very interesting. The whole dynamic is gross, really. And for fantasy, you're taking not too much away. You're starting Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, obviously Isaiah Pacheco, their star, their best player for the Chiefs. If that suspension, or not the suspension, the ejection was a little bit silly of him, but yeah, you're starting the Chiefs moving forward still. And for the Packers, like, I'm just going to keep patting myself on the back, because I really was just all right on this game, truly. And I did confidently say start Christian Watson. I was hearing the fantasy footballers, not to say any names, say not to start Christian Watson, because L'Jarius Sneed is historically good against wide receiver ones. But like, I mean, that's L'Jarius Sneed. That's like saying not to start a receiver against Patrick Surtain, like that, and that's Patrick Surtain. You know what I mean? So I wasn't scared about L'Jarius Sneed, and I was starting Christian Watson, and he had 2 touchdowns on Sneed's head, and he was beneficiary of some dots from Love, some absolute dots from Jordan Love, and yeah, just a beautiful performance from the Packers. I think you can start Jaden Reed moving forward, their running back, whoever it's going to be, and you just want to monitor that Christian Watson injury situation.
Yeah, and this I mean, if you're a Packers fan, it's all smiles for me right now because this is the youngest team in the NFL, and it's just finally starting to click, and they're a team to be reckoned with here down the stretch.
You can smell the playoffs. You can smell it. I feel the Packers are going to make the playoffs. I called it before this game even, and I can feel it. They're a really fun team right now, and we'll get on to the last game of the week, Monday Night Football. The Bengals went into Jacksonville and somehow beat the Jags 34-31 in overtime. And this one was not one that I was expecting. This is a game that completely went the complete opposite as how I was expecting it. Obviously, the Trevor injury is something that we need to get out of the way. It's very unfortunate, but it just barely came out that it looks like it is a
Ankle sprain.
Official report. Okay, just an ankle sprain, so that definitely could be worse. He might miss a few weeks, but it won't be, season ending. So that is good for the Jaguars. Season, their hopes. But yeah, that ultimately was a big reason why the Bengals won this game. But a shout out to Jake Browning, because why was he dealing? Like, why was Jake Browning dealing this entire game? I put money on him to get a fumble. I'm not even gonna lie, because like, what was this? He was terrible last week. I've seen Jake Browning since his Washington days in 2014. I literally watched him twice when he was in college, and I've never seen this. He is not that good, and he was just completely dealing this entire game. Like Troy Aikman said, there's quarterbacks that play a decade in the NFL and they don't have a game like this. And it was a great game from him. He was dealing. So shout out to Browning, Chase, Mixon. They all balled, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened to the Bengals offense, but putting up 34 points is just ridiculous. And yeah, Jake Browning's official stats, 32 of 37, 354 yards and a passing touchdown. I mean, you could not stop the man. I mean, it was hilarious. And then he also had a big run towards the end of the game where he kind of like turned over to the side. It didn't look very athletic, but he like busted for like 20 yards, and it was a big play. But yeah, I mean, this one couldn't have been any more polar opposite of what we expected to happen. Obviously, yeah, like you said, Trevor going down did affect the end of the game, but I mean, CJ Beathard actually went out there. I mean, minus his fumble on the very first play, he went out there and he threw 9 of 10 passes. He was 9 for 10, and he had a 7-yard run that he fumbled, but it went forward. And he almost had a nice, beautiful game-winning pass to Calvin Ridley that ended up getting called back because of a hold. But that would have won the Jags the game. But yeah, just overall, it was a crazy game. I was not expecting this. Joe Mixon actually looked very awesome. He found the end zone twice. Jamar Chase on that big touchdown was electric. I mean, he lit up the scoreboard. He lit up fantasy numbers, as I would know, because I played him, for having a total of 11 receptions, 149 yards, and a big touchdown. So that was brutal. Joe Mixon getting it done through the air too, 6 for 49. But yeah, this whole Bengals team was just rolling, and even T. Higgins had some big catches. Tyler Boyd, though, his interception that he threw.
What was that? Was that the worst play in NFL history?
that was bad. I don't even know what to even say about that. I don't even know why he threw that. I don't even know what that play design was, but it was bad from the start. And he just threw it. Was it Josh Allen who ended up having the pick? I don't remember. Yeah. He threw it right to his hands. So Josh Allen kind of seemed shook for a second. He's like, wait, really? That was just crazy. But shout out to the Bengals, big win. They got it done. The Jaguars did have every opportunity, even with Trevor Lawrence going out. So don't degrade that win to that. It was still a hell of a game from the Bengals.
Yeah, it really was just like a backwards weird game. And for fantasy, your takeaways for the Bengals, you're starting just Mixon and Chase. Those two are stars and they're going to be force fed. So they are actually good starts, but those are the only ones. You're not throwing a dart at Boyd or Higgins, sadly. And then for the Jaguars, it's scary. If there's no Lawrence, it's really Etienne, Uh, Kirk goes down in this game, so you're scared about Kirk's groin injury. It looked like it was just his groin that got hurt. So I don't know how serious that actually is, but that is crazy. I've never seen a situation where he's out for the game with the situation like that. So I guess you have to monitor that Kirk situation. But with no Trevor in here, spreading the ball around. He, by the way, before he got hurt, he was kind of dealing. He's very accurate, always very surgical, great passer of the football. And without Trevor, I think ETN's like the only start, and you're really scared of anyone else. Evan Ingram has a really good game here, but without Trevor, that's scary. I'll pat myself on the back one more time. I took the over on a Evan Ingram touchdown, and it was his first touchdown of the year. So statistically, that was pretty immaculate.
That's crazy. Yeah, like you said, on the Jaguar side, it's just ETN until we see if Lawrence is okay, which I obviously with an ankle sprain, I think he'll be out several weeks. I'd assume at least 2 to 3 weeks. And then yeah, of course, like we said, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, just 2 stars.
And I guess two more shouts for the Jaguars is Parker Washington. He did kind of go off in kind of his first NFL action. He had 6 catches, 61 yards, and an awesome athletic touchdown. The rookie out of Penn State. We both actually liked Parker Washington, so you do like to see that. I'll just say it right now, I'm going to try to pick him up in my league, even with the Trevor situation kind of unknown. And the other name I was thinking of is Zay Jones, just because Christian Kirk's situation is unknown. So think about those Jaguars receivers, but without Trevor, that would make that hard. So just monitor the injuries, and yeah, just a crazy game here.
Yeah, wild game. Shout out to the Bengals. I mean, this just kind of does make the AFC playoff race just that much more interesting because it seems like there's a lot of teams going to be fighting for those final wild card spots, and it's going to be a blood race moving forward. So stay tuned. This is going to be fun. Stay tuned for updated draft stuff because I mean we're going to be getting into heat of that stuff pretty soon.
Yeah, the AFC is so dang tight. Like I could see if Trevor misses a few weeks, the Texans could win that division, and you never know with the Jaguars. So it's just gonna be interesting with all the injuries and such a tight AFC. And yeah, fun going over all these games. Really fun weekend. I had a lot of fun this weekend, and shout out to this man again, Jordan Love, for absolutely dealing. I think he is a future franchise quarterback, so that's really fun. And yeah, really fun week. Thanks for joining, Josh.
Yeah, it was a good one. I can't wait for next week to see how everything starts to really unravel.
Yep, we're getting to the nitty gritty, the playoff hunt. So yeah, like, subscribe if you liked, and yeah, peace.
Peace.